All right, we're live. Hey, everybody.
Cool.
Welcome, fellow unbelievers. Kind of the opposite of what Stan Lee would say in his movies. Welcome, true believers. Welcome, true unbelievers. Anyways, today I'm talking with Duke Bonanza. We're going to hear his deconversion story in a moment here. We're just sort of talking a little bit about music before we got going here, because it's one of the things we found we had in common, quite closely in common actually, is our musical tastes are very similar. So anyways, Duke, how long have you been what you would, whoops, I'm rattling my camera here. Sorry, it's sitting on top of a very finicky, tipsy garbage can at the moment. I'm in my bedroom, as usually I'm in my living room, but my roommate's back from LA from going to see ELO live down there. So I don't want to disturb her, so I got to do it in the comfort of my room. But Duke, when was it that you decided you were an atheist, and what happened along the way to bring you to that point? That's basically what I like to focus on. So, Lady, take it away.
Okay. Well, I would say I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2012 when I came out. 2012 or 2013, somewhere in that neighborhood when I came out of the closet as an atheist and had been an unbeliever for roughly 2 years.
Okay.
Before that. So I want to say it really started when I was around 26, but I was still a believer. I still went to church. I still believed, but there was just some tiny little seed somewhere in the back of my mind that was growing. It was going, this is bullshit. This is all bullshit. But it didn't really take hold until, gosh, I want to say probably around 9 years ago is when it really started taking hold. And my move was very gradual. I started off, I moved from Christian to deist because even though I couldn't bring myself to reconcile Christianity anymore, I couldn't look at the religion and say that, anything positive. I couldn't find anything that I felt was positive about it at all anymore.
Right.
But I also couldn't bring myself to say, that there's not a God, because it didn't make sense to me. I was brought up Baptist, so science education was not really a priority
Right.
growing up, so I didn't really have any understanding of a universe that didn't have a God figure could work at all.
Right.
I moved from that to agnosticism as I started getting more and more into the literature that I was reading. From there to atheism, and from atheism into anti-theism in the last year or two.
Well,
I didn't actually start.
Now.
Oh yeah, man, I'm full blown positive atheist. Like I had to make this. I just make the statement that there is no God.
Okay.
I would say the religions of man are demonstrably man-made. They're demonstrably untrue. Like we can show that they're untrue. They do not match up with reality. They do not match up with science. They do not match up with anything. They make no solid predictions of anything. They're not observable. They're not testable. I mean, they're just untrue. And then the only arguments I've ever heard that lend any credulity at all towards there being a God of any kind really only lends credulity towards like a deist God, like an impersonal deist God, and maybe just a prime mover or creator of some kind, something that started everything. But it doesn't link directly to a personal loving God that's in people's lives, in which, I mean, you can just look at the world and see that that's bullshit too, because if there's a personal God, he's capricious as hell. He's picking and choosing. He's throwing darts at a freaking phone book. Like, what's going on with the guy? Like, is he, what I mean? Like, are you serious? You can't be a loving God and you got people starving in one continent and people are doing great on another. Maybe it, makes more sense that there isn't a God, and all of this stuff is just luck. Some people are just profoundly unlucky, and some people are way luckier than others.
Well, we don't control where we're born, right?
We don't control where we're born or how we're born or what we are. We don't control anything.
Right.
Really, you know what I mean? It's a strange issue. It's a strange thing being anything at all. But if you look at the deist model for God, I mean, it's an incorporeal, invisible, impersonal God. So even if that God exists,
don't forget non-intervening.
Right, non-intervening. So even if that God exists, his existence would be indecipherable to me from his not existing.
Yep, exactly.
So there's no point for me saying that, well, there might be a creator. Like, no, if they could prove that, like if there's somebody came along with some crackerjack evidence and they were just like, look, we finally know, doesn't prove any of these religions right, but we know that the universe did have, in fact, a creator. I would have to change my position from atheist to deist. Now, I wouldn't have to change my anti-theist position, because I can still be very anti-religion. But I have to change my position on whether or not there was a God to deist. But the thing about that is it wouldn't have any demonstrable effect on my life. Okay, I'm not going to change my ethics. I'm not going to change the way I view things. I'm not, you know what I mean? It would be just like finding out black holes exist. It's fascinating, but I'm never going to meet one. So,
well, let's hope not.
Right. But yeah, I grew up independent Baptist. If you don't know what an independent Baptist is, they can't stand those damn liberal Southern Baptists.
Liberal Southern Baptists.
She'll tell you. I grew up during the Satanic Panic in the 80s. During the Satanic Panic, I wasn't allowed to play D&D or any of that stuff. It was all satanic. It was all going to lead you down the path to hell. The religion is a strange one, because it's like, it's got to be the easiest thing ever. Like, all you got to do is believe God, have a little faith, say a little prayer, and that's it forever. At that point, it doesn't matter what you do, you're forgiven. But there is so much doubt sown all the time that you never really feel secure. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, you're secure forever. But if you're doing all these things, then you probably aren't secure forever. It's like, well, you're throwing me some mixed signals here. Right. The way the churches I grew up in worked, it would have been a lot like what Matt Powell has to say. Have you seen that guy? The let's kill the gay people and the bad children guy.
Yep.
That's exactly like, I wasn't like that by the time I was 16 or 17, but as like a preteen, early teens, I would have been almost exactly like that kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the views I had. And it wasn't until I got a little older and I got around gay people and I got around other people and I got to seeing things that I said, well, I can't agree with any of that. But, I grew
you
up
find
that
out
way.
they're human beings just like you, right?
Well, there was an enormous amount of dissonance with me, as well as I've always been bisexual. So it's one of those situations where once I hit puberty and that kind of came into light, that as selfish as it is, that changes your mind too. Because, it's one of those things where it's like, well, I'm starting to feel that way too. Like, I'm supposed to be born again. God's supposed to live inside of me. This is not supposed to be possible. You know what I'm saying? Like, I shouldn't have these things going on, because he, where he exists, there can be no darkness. So I don't understand, what's going on.
Well,
so I grew up like that.
I was kind of looked at it this way too, before you go on this, like, if God is love, like they say, wouldn't that encompass all forms of love?
I would say so. All forms of legitimate love. I mean, anything that's legitimately love.
If you love someone, it's legitimate. If you ask me, it's legitimate if you love someone. Right.
Well, I only say that because, like, every time I bring that point up, there's some jackass that brings up pedophiles or something. And it's always the dumbest thing ever. I hate it. But you know what I mean? Like, all forms of love that's not
necessarily love, though. That's merely an attraction, right? So
it's not love at all. But it's just it's one of those hashtag disclaimers that I throw out there so I can avoid that conversation, because I know it's coming. Anytime you start talking about how there is no wrong love. I actually had a design for a T-shirt once that just said "No Wrong Love" on it. But that comes up. So yeah, I would say that he would respect any kind of love that was real, and I would also say if he existed and he was all love, I don't see how he can be such a huge contradiction to begin with. Like, you can't be all love and all merciful and all forgiving, and then at the same time be, completely perfect in ways of justice. You know what I mean? Justice and mercy are incompatible with one another. Mercy is the intercession against justice. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't punish somebody, if I don't shoot somebody that just murdered my child, I've shown them mercy. Most people,
Yeah.
even though I would still be prosecuted for it, most people would at least understand this person just murdered this guy's child, and he just, he took the law into his own hands. But if I don't shoot you because you cut me off in traffic, I didn't show you any mercy. I just didn't behave like a psychopath,
Right, yeah.
There is the God of the Bible, right? So it's not like he's like showing people mercy for awful things that they've done. Like he's like, oh, look, you've lived a pretty good life, but you didn't believe in me, and you told some lies here and there, and you didn't fit up, and you weren't perfect. So I got to burn you in the pit for all eternity. Sucks to be you. Like that's not a freaking loving God, man. There's nothing loving about that.
That blows me away that people actually think that somehow an eternity of torture and pain or whatever seems to be justice when you have only committed a finite crime. So it's
ridiculous. Anybody, I wouldn't put that on anybody. I don't care how bad a person they were. They could be the worst person ever. Infinite torture is not something I would prescribe. Maybe oblivion, but not infinite torture. That's just bananas, man. And they say that with a straight face and a smile.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, yeah.
And there was always some dissonance there for me there with that. It's so ridiculous, and it always sat. It didn't sit very well with me. And then the idea of heaven never sat very well with me. It's interesting because I was having a conversation with a very close friend of mine about that, and she had intimated that when she was a child, the concept of heaven terrified her. And the minute I read that, I thought about it and realized it had me also. Even at like 8 or 9 years old, it was like, well, wait a minute, like how does this work? Like it's a terrifying concept. Like the idea of like, what am I going to be? How am I going to be me? What about the people that don't make it there? What am I going to do all day long? And then you look at the biblical advice, like, so we're going to sing nonstop and throw praises at God's feet for all time.
Sounds like fun,
invigorating. Right? Yeah, that sounds invigorating. That's just something I'm going to get on board for. Yeah.
Where's my unending mug of beer? Like that's what I'm looking forward to, is an unending mug of beer.
That never gets you too drunk. You never get too drunk. You never get too sober, and you never have a hangover. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And you can just conjure titties out of nowhere. They're not even connected to anything. So every once in a while, you can squeeze one, have a good time. It all works, I personally can't think of an eternity of anything that would be interesting to me. You know what I mean? Like I scare the shit out of some of my especially my religious friends. Like my religious friends act like they're trying to Baker act, like they're getting ready to Baker act me when I talk about death. But it's like the idea that one day I don't have to exist anymore is comforting to me. I like the idea that I'll do the best I can. Because if I died and then showed up somewhere else, remembering this life, and they said, "Yeah, you got to do it all over again," I'd be like, "Oh my God, are you serious?"
Just pull the plug. I'm done.
That. Yeah, I just want to take a rest. I want to do my best, have a rest. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, get back to me in a few millennium, and we'll see.
Yeah. Check back after I've taken a good 2,000-3,000 year nap, and plus you got to reset everything, dude. I don't want to remember any of this shit. I don't want to do this again. Exactly.
Well, there's some things I like, but anyway.
Yeah, there's experiences I'd love, and there's experiences I'd love to have. I'd love to have an extended period of time. I wouldn't mind, like, if they could get the technology to where we can live a couple 100 years. That'd be awesome. Because then by the end of it, I will have learned plenty of things. I haven't had a lot of time since becoming an atheist to learn all the things I want to learn. There's huge gaps in my education. I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, got a GED. Everything I've learned, for the most part, has been just from me reading books and thinking about things. And so I'd love to be able to take the time to do that. But just the idea of being, like, existing forever is just banana to me. Like, I can't even think about that and not, like, get cringy on the inside.
It's actually frightening, really.
Yeah. And then on top of that, like, I've asked this question to people before. It's like, okay, so you're going to go to heaven, and God's going to remove all of the bad thoughts and all the bad feelings. He's going to remove all that badness out, and there's going to be nothing but joy. How do you remain you?
You don't.
You don't.
You're not you anymore.
Right. So there is no exiting this world, whether it's to go to a heavenly plane or it's to do anything else. There's almost no exiting this world in any of the religious senses that ends with anything but the oblivion of who you are. Like, you're going to stop existing no matter what. Yep. So to me, it's like, well, then why bother?
Yep.
The biggest thing that turned me away from religion was the fact that I got to a point where I felt like I've been praying for 28 years for peace and to feel his presence, and it's never happened. Like, I got radio silence, dead radio silence. Now, I would have moments of transcendence during some services. If we had a preacher that was really charismatic and he really brought the point home and he really hammered it in and he was positive and he had a great message and all that stuff, there were times when I would feel elated, but then by the time I was 28, I was like, I felt the same way when I saw Nine Inch Nails. You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah.
I felt the same way the first time I got laid. Like, that seems to be some kind of there seems to be some kind of biological component to that. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can, and the scariest thing to me, like, it's funny because the modern liberal churches are like the more insidious thing, because like the old churches, you got an old lady with blue hair banging on a piano, and you got some guy that can kind of carry a tune, lean into the music, and everybody's singing along, and it's just these old, worn out tunes that are not interesting at all, and then you move into these liberal kind of non-denominational churches and they got these full bands, and it's almost like going to a concert every week. Yeah. And after I became a non-believer, my ex-wife used to drag me to this church all the time, and she finally eventually stopped, because I would just sit there and seethe the entire message. Like, I would just sit there through the whole thing, and you could boil an egg on top of my head. You could fry an egg on top of my head. I hated it. But I noticed it was like, if you really pay attention, their usage of music is genius, right? Because they basically just work the whole crowd up until everybody is just open like a freaking book. And then the guy gets up there and he pours his message into them, and they're completely open to it. And then they break it down with another song, and everybody feels great when they leave. And it's like that's how they're selling it. I mean, I wonder if you took the music out of the equation, I wonder how much harder it would be for these soft-spoken freaking supposed liberal preachers that are still saying anti-homosexual things. I wonder how hard it would be for them to sell that message if they didn't get everybody worked into a frenzy before they even got started,
Yeah.
It's I hate it.
I hate people in the chat that are saying hello to you, by the way, because I know you can't actually see the chat.
Okay, so, who's all that? Hello, Shane, everybody.
Our Ninja, Shane. I think that's it so far.
Oh, okay.
Well, at least it says we got 5 viewers, but only a couple are typing in the chat at the moment. So maybe that'll change. By the way, guys, once we're done with our conversation here, if you have any questions for Duke, I'll be happy to read them to him, since he doesn't have access to the comments at the moment. Sorry, carry on now.
Oh, no sweat, man. So yeah, I had all this radio silence for all these years, and I started exploring. I think the only person I knew that was an atheist, the only person I knew about that was an atheist, an outspoken atheist at the time, was Penn Jillette.
Right.
And I was a huge Penn and Teller fan. I loved the show Bullshit.
Oh, me too.
I thought it was so freaking great. And so I started watching his Penn Says videos, and then he changed it to Pinpoint. And through him, I discovered Hitchens and Harris, Dawkins and Dennett. Me too. And I've never read anything by Dawkins or Dennett. They didn't really appeal to me that much, and I don't really know why. But Sam Harris appealed to me immediately. Dennett's got some good stuff. Does he?
Yeah.
I'll likely read it eventually. I just never got around to it. I don't know what it was. There was something about them that Hitchens.
As for Dawkins, I recommend that one.
Right. I fell in love with Hitchens immediately. Like Hitchens was just, I was just like, this man is a friggin' genius, and everything he says is amazing. Like
he doesn't pull any punches.
And he doesn't pull any punches. He didn't pull yet.
Oh. You kind
give
of
his
faded on me
talks,
there.
like when watching Sam give his talks was just eye-opening and inspirational for me. So, so I immediately read God Is Not Great. I immediately read Letter to a Christian Nation and was it End of Faith? Yeah, End
Yes.
of Faith. And I've read everything Sam's ever written, and a lot of what Hitchens has written. But it was actually Penn Jillette that got me started. Like I've always wanted to actually meet him and shake his hand and just say thanks, because I had nowhere to turn, and I had at the same time, like when I started losing my faith, I started watching Penn Jillette, started reading these other things. I had enormous amounts of pressure being put on me from family members and specifically from my ex-wife, who was going out and buying all these apologetics books and telling me that I need to read them and getting down my throat about it, and you can't tell anybody. You have to keep it a secret, and like we almost split up.
To keep your atheism a secret?
Yeah, she didn't. She wanted me. If I'm going to be this way, I need to not tell anybody. The night I came out as an atheist, I did it on Facebook. I did it and I published it. Many of the people that were close to me in my life already knew it. Like my mother knew, my ex-wife knew, a couple of our close friends knew. That night, she and I almost split up. Like she left, and then she came back, and she, she just was like, now all of my friends are gonna know they were right about you. All these crazy things. I said things I shouldn't have said. I said awful things too. We were just a toxic relationship to begin with. This was just the thing that broke it.
Right.
It took it about another 5 to 6 years, maybe 7 years before we split up for good. And it was mostly due to my just disbelief. Like once I stopped believing, she just didn't really have any much use for me anymore.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right?
Yeah, we drifted apart. I've had relationships since her with girls that were still religious. It's not that big a deal. I would prefer somebody that was entirely irreligious, but that's hard to find down here in the South. I am surrounded by freaking Baptists, dude. They are everywhere. I mean, we're talking like I am in Trump country, dude. You know what I mean? Like I am in Trump country. These people all voted for Trump. Every damn one of them. Like I think there was like instances of people that had Clinton posters in their front yard and they got like torn up.
Wow, really?
And, I mean, yeah, living down here in Twitter are the two things that turned me from being like not really an open anti-theist into being an open anti-theist. Like when I started, living in Charlotte, it's a really liberal city, and all of the Christians I would meet would be these really upbeat liberal Christians that were really super accepting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I got spoiled. And I got kind of just. It was in like a bubble, and I thought things were going a way different direction than they had been. I was still open atheist, and I still had conversations about it, and I didn't agree. And I would tease them. I'd come to church with my ex-wife every once in a while, and her little Christian friends would be like, "What in the world are you doing here?" And I'd say, "Well, Satan needs a representative at these things." You know what I mean? So I showed up to represent the devil. You know what I mean? And they'd laugh and we'd have a good time. And then I moved back down here into the deep South, out in a rural area, and discovered that the old bigoted, disgusting Christianity is still quite alive and well. It's doing just fine down here in the South. I mean, it's doing fine well enough that I went to a parade one year in a neighboring city. And one of the trucks that went by had this just venomous pastor screaming into a bullhorn about homosexuals and everything. I mean, he passed me. He was probably passing me for a minute and a half, and I think I heard a dozen disgusting things come out of the man's mouth. And it's like he's just empowered. He feels empowered to get out here because there's not any repercussions. There's nobody that's going to come along and be like, "You're an asshole." Like, everybody's on board with it. And then dealing with people online, it's just like, I just can't take this hippy dippy liberal stance for these people anymore. I can't do it. I can't countenance the things they're saying. I can't go along with this anymore. I've got to go full bore into this and just start knocking heads in, because it's just the things I've seen people like, and these are educated people. That's the worst part. Like you'll see people that have at least some modicum of education, educally, but they're at least not demonstrably stupid. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not like the people that leave YouTube comments and you're like, you can't even spell. I don't even know why you're on here. Like, how'd you even get onto your computer? You know, how do you even remember? How did you get this far in life and not choke to death on something shiny? I don't get it. But you know, you're talking to these people and they'll just say these things, and it's just like women and men aren't equal, and it's like, what fucking century are you from, dude? Like, where are you from? Did you come here from the 1800s?
They have to go with that because in the Bible it says that Adam was created first, which is crazy to me, because if God knew all this was going to happen ahead of time, wouldn't he have made them together at the same time? But obviously the book was written by men, so Eve was taken from Adam, making her less than Adam. You know what I mean? So they have to go with that, or else that's another hole in their belief.
Yeah, but also in that same book, light was created before the sun. You know what I'm saying? The sun was created well after everything. It's like, wait a minute, like, I don't know how that works.
So there were plants, but no photosynthesis. That makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. There's no contradiction there. So, yeah, it's that crazy. It just seems like, you know, somebody's got to do it. So there's got to be people out there that are just cranking down on this, because there's not enough of us to begin with. You know, there's not enough of us to start, and at some point or another, we need to tilt the scales in our direction.
Well, otherwise, it's just growing.
They're growing, and they're growing at a rate that people don't necessarily realize. Like, I think there's more people that are atheists than admit it. Because I've known far too many people. Yeah, I've known far too many people that will say, "Yeah, I totally believe. I'm a Christian. I totally believe in God." But you get a couple beers in them.
Yeah, things change, right? Yeah.
You get a whole different speech out of them. Like, you know, that's when you start hearing, well, I don't care if I go to hell, all my friends are going to be there anyways. And it's like, yeah, you're not really a Christian. I don't. I mean, I don't like to play that game, but it's like, you know, you don't really hear people that are really Christian say those kinds of things. It's like, you get the people that are just like, I'm just going along to get along. Like, I don't want to think about it, and I don't care. Just going along to get along. And I have never been a go along to get along kind of guy. You know what I mean? I always say I'm not a lock pick. I'm a battering ram. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any subtlety at all. I'm so not subtle. It's it's gross. Like, I just barrel into the freaking conversation, both, you know, with my head ducked down and my shoulder forward. Right. And that's just how I've always been. So once I became an atheist, there was zero chance that I would be a quiet one. You know what I mean? There's just zero chance. I don't have a quiet bone in my body, so I just, you know, I couldn't be quiet about things anymore. Period. Like, that used to bug my ex too, but it would be like, I'm sorry, somebody just posted Pat Robertson saying some nonsense about how this thing that just happened and killed a bunch of people is our fault because of freaking homosexuals. I got to get on board with this. I got to say something about that. I can't be quiet about that. Somebody needs to smack Pat Robertson.
And you shouldn't. You shouldn't
nobody
be quiet
should.
About that. Because that kind of vitriol does not need to be out there. And we got to shut people like that with those kind of attitudes down.
Yeah, we got to shut them down. Like Ayaan Hirsi Ali says, man, tolerance of intolerance is cowardice. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not going to stand for it. And I wasn't going to stand for it then. And I just, you know, eventually, like I said, I came out of the closet as an atheist. It wrecked my marriage, you know, wrecked a few relationships for me. But for the most part, a lot of the people that have been in my life have more or less just accepted it. I think what they tell themselves is that I was a Christian before and I'm just a rebellious Christian now. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm still born again. I'm just in rebellion. And God will get me back someday.
Nonsense.
Yeah, they don't understand. Like, they don't understand just how, like, the way I describe it is that, like, I started to lose my faith, and it was like a snowball rolling downhill. Like, I was trying to stop it, and I couldn't. And it wasn't even like I brought it up. It just started popping into my head. You know, I used to just use an analogy to describe faith, at least anecdotally for me. Like, the faith I had was like a fortress. It was like the walls were so sturdy you could shoot anything you wanted to at them, and they would hold. No matter how logical your argument, no matter what you said, you could fire those missiles at the walls of my castle, and those walls would absolutely hold. You wouldn't even dent them. But the
Right, you
minute
just
I walked
dismiss
up,
it.
yeah, the minute I walked up and touched that wall from the inside, it fell over.
There you go.
You know, that's exactly what happened. And I think that's a lot of what happens with other people too. I think they're so grounded in it and it's been so ingrained in them that they can't fathom a world where anything other than that is true.
I know indoctrination is a powerful tool.
It is, and and especially when you start from the very earliest age. You know, like you've got these kids in church every Sunday from the time they're born, and
Yep.
and not only that, I mean, it's multiplied because everybody around them is also Christian.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
And
it helps
it's
strengthen
interesting.
that, right? So.
Yeah, because I mean, not only do mommy and daddy believe it, my best friend Matt's mommy and daddy believes it, and the pastor believes it, and everybody in my community believes it, and I've never met anybody that didn't believe it, so it must be freaking true.
Right. The whole popularity, I mean, true thing just sort of becomes a reality to you. Well, why would anyone believe this if it wasn't true, right? But yeah,
Right.
popularity does not equal true.
That's exactly right, and the way you feel about it doesn't equal truth either.
Right.
That's an interesting conundrum I get into all the time because like a lot of times when I get the impression when some people are arguing, well, there has to be a God because if not, then morals are just your opinion. And it's like, well,
They
yeah,
are.
but why does that? Yeah, but why does that mean that God, there has to be a God? I mean,
Aren't
I
they
get
God's
that you don't
opinion
like.
then?
Yeah, I get that you think that morals like are just coming up with morals and deciding what's wrong is on us is bad because then there's no objective reason to do it other than that's an instance where popularity is a big deal. Like if everybody in a society all kind of collectively agrees these are the rules we're going to follow, then any outliers get punished for not following the rules and people all follow the rules. But why is it that you feel bad about it? Like it would make you feel icky if there was no God. Why does that change anything? It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm scared by that thought, actually, though. If there's no God, then there's no morals. So what does that mean? You're going to run around killing and raping people now all of a sudden because you have no one to answer to? You do still have someone to answer to. You've got society at large to answer to. So if you're going to behave in that fashion, you can expect to be dealt with in a similar fashion.
That's
or
exactly right.
punished, right? See?
I like Penn Jillette said one of the best things I've ever heard about that. He said somebody asked him, if there's no God, why don't you go around killing and raping everybody that you want? And he said, I have, and the number is 0. The number of people I want to kill and rape is 0. It makes me concerned that you have an issue with that. Like, why would you even think of that? But it's also a parroting point. Like, some people don't even know why they think what they think. And
That's true.
I found that to be true. I found that to be true on both sides of the discussion. I've met atheists that were atheists, but they had no idea. They had a bunch of slogans. They've read memes. They know the memes and they can repeat the memes and parrot the points, but they don't really understand why they're doing it. And Christians do the same thing. There's very few of the Christian people I've met that are truly dangerous if you get them in a one-on-one conversation in terms of the discussion, as like proving you wrong about something. Most of the time, they just derail the conversation as best they can and then prance around victorious and talk about how their apologetics are irrefutable.
Yeah, it's like that pigeon playing chess bullshit there you always talk about.
Yeah,
Pigeon will just shit on the board and run around like it won.
Yeah. It just knock all the pieces over, shit on the board, and strut around victoriously. And they use like a lot of different tactics. Like I think one of the main tactics I've run into so many times is the minute they start losing in the conversation, the minute I start getting the upper hand, they'll pull atheism is a religion card out of the woodwork. Because usually that derails the conversation entirely. Because then you got to spend 2.5 hours trying to define something. It's like I never, ever, ever get into that with them. They'll say if I'm talking to somebody and they say atheism is a religion, I'll just say, okay, you're right, atheism is a religion, and it's the only one that's right.
Don't do that, Duke. Don't give them any fucking fuel for their fire bullshit.
I just give it to them for the moment.
I have a question for you, too, from Shane, actually.
Okay.
Shane asks, Duke, were you ever vocal as a Christian? Did you ever, were you ever evangelical or what's the word I'm looking for? Postulatize.
Proselytizing.
That's it.
Proselytizing. Yes, I actually led 3 atheists to the religion while I was still a Christian. I actually converted 3 people that were confirmed atheists to the religion.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't be friends anymore. Oh, okay. Back in the day.
Back in the day. Yeah, that actually kind of sits. That doesn't sit very well with me anymore. But I mean, that's the one thing I can say is that when I'm dealing with Christians, I do realize that because when I was doing it, there was not any malice there. I was doing what I was doing because I was genuinely concerned that this person was going to die and be tortured for all eternity.
Yeah,
and
it comes from a good place. It's just misdirected or well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's
a good place, but still wrong ideas. But
yeah, well, yeah. And I realize the statement, like when I do the gimme with the thing, it's likely going to catch me some shit. But I just don't like the conversation derailed. So I'll just say, hey, man, if you say so, that's fine. Then I'm not going to argue with you about it. Let's move on. Let's get back to how you explain, whatever it is I'm asking them and they're trying to duck. Because people will dodge. They'll do anything they can to dodge actually having to answer the questions. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Until you can get them buckled down to the point where all they can say is, well, I have faith. And at that point, you've both won and lost. I mean, because you can't argue with that. It's the same way when people say, like I don't know.
You know what, though? I don't agree with that because I think you could just say, you know what? You can have an infinite amount of faith and it'll still amount to nothing because faith is called faith because it's not knowledge.
Truth. I mean, you can say that. But what I mean is, once they fall back on the faith card, they're typically they're just falling back on their emotions, and you can argue about why faith is not relevant, and why their faith, their particular faith, right? Why their particular kind of faith is not relevant, but more or less they've just ducked into their shell at that point. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, sometimes I don't know that I've ever converted a Christian person. If I have, I don't know the person. But I
have, but only one so far. But that's a decent start.
Hey, man, that's one less person that's believing nonsense, But I think, it's just an issue of like the discussions I've had are usually around other people. I'm typically not interested in trying to convert a person as much as I'm just interested in defending my position. And my hope is that there's spillover to somebody that maybe isn't super religious. Somebody that's not so religious, they're going to go out and buy Frank Turek's book. God, that freaking guy.
Not like they're on the fence kind of thing. Yeah, the aim really isn't to just deconvert them. It's just to get them to think a little bit more critically about what they believe and ask themselves how they end up there and why they're there. That's like, how did I get convinced of this? And then they'll start to answer their own questions eventually. Yeah,
and how convinced of it would you be if you'd been born, like if you were been born a Muslim? Wouldn't you be just as convinced?
Or a Jain or whatever, right? Yeah.
No matter where you're going, like there's you know what I mean? Whatever you're raised as, you typically stay as. And,
I'm an example of that, actually. I mean, I'm adopted. I was adopted from birth. Literally brought home from the hospital 10 days after I was born, or 11 days or whatever. I think I was born on the 20th, brought home on Halloween, so that's 11 days. But anyways, my parents were Catholic Christian of orientation, my birth parents, whom I've met, by the way. But also, I was raised in a Jewish home. I had a bar mitzvah, the whole spiel, right? So you don't choose your beliefs in that respect. They're put upon you by whoever you're raised by. So, and
that's
I'm an perfect example of that.
That is precisely true. And on top of that, like, you don't choose your disbelief, I don't think, most of the time. I didn't, certainly. I think some people might, but I didn't. Like, I didn't want to stop believing.
Rather than a process.
You know what I mean? Like, it just happened. Like, I just, one day I started having doubts, and those doubts grew, and they grew, and they grew, and then I started having questions, and nobody can answer my questions, and there was nobody that, and so, like, eventually it just grew, and it worked itself into what I am today. But by the time by the time people were really starting to get concerned and turn me back, it was at that point I was kind of to where I just couldn't believe. I couldn't believe. Like I looked at the situation, I said, "No, I can't believe that."
Yeah, I
Like I
know.
tried.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
trying to, and it's not working. Like I'm trying with everything I've got to believe this crap, and I can't make it work anymore. And then like once you start seeing the holes, man, it's like a magic trick. You know, like if you know magic really well, and somebody's doing magic tricks, well then you know what they're doing. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
you
So
can
you're not
see
going to
through. Yeah, it's
you
like the
can see
Wizard of
right
Oz. I
through
can
it.
see behind the curtain now, right?
Yeah, I've seen. Once you do, there's no going back. You know, um, which is one of the reasons why I'm like, I hate to do the no true Scotsman thing, but it's one of those reasons why, like, when somebody gets into a conversation and said, "Yeah, I used to be an atheist and now I'm a Christian," I think, really? Did you really? I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that used to be an atheist and then became a Christian, but for the most part, that just seems so like such a ludicrous idea to me. I often
Yeah.
wonder if it's not. I often wonder if it's not that whole because like people want to get you to identify with, get them to like get you to identify them with you. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So a lot of times people will enter a conversation with just a flat out lie. Like I used to be a Republican too, but now I saw blah 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 blah, and I changed my mind. They're just trying to create some kind of common ground between you and them so they can talk to you.
Yeah.
Uh, and I wonder sometimes if that's not what people do. Like, oh, I totally used to be an atheist. It's like you didn't really. I mean, like, did you? Did you? But at the same time, like I damn, like I could see they could say like if I said I used to be a Christian, and they say you really didn't, that actually usually pisses me off because it's like, well, no, I really did. Like I really believe. Like I went and knocked on people's doors with a Bible in
Yep.
my hand and told strangers about Jesus, man. Like I actually really, really, really tried.
Hmm.
And thankfully, at some point, my brain came along and said, 11 million species of animal on a fucking boat.
Hmm. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, it was like, wait, well, yeah, that can't happen. That's not true. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's no evidence that that many Jews wandered around in that small of a place for that many freaking years.
What they say
There's,
would take normally about 11 days to complete nowadays. But
yeah,
we'll give them a
yeah,
few extra days, maybe a couple of weeks because of the numbers and the children and elderly. We'll give them a few extra days. But yeah, it
yeah, but
should.
not 40 years. And then on top of that, what are we're talking about
Yeah.
like 3 million people wandering around in some really small area for a very long time, and there's
Uh,
not one speck of
allegedly,
allegedly. That's what I mean.
allegedly, God was tricking them constantly and redirecting them. So that's what
Right,
they
but
say.
I'm
Well,
just talking about
we have
there's no
we have the good
archaeological
God.
evidence.
We have the good God with us in the chat room. God, the good one, who I've seen many of his videos. I love the mask he wears; it's fantastic. But so, what do you say, God? Were you intentionally misdirecting the Hebrews or Israelites, or what the fuck they were calling themselves at the time, wandering around the desert there? Because that's the story we heard every time I went for Passover. So just check it. We'll see what he says.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It just got to a point where it was like, yeah, that's it for me. Like I can't get on board with this shit anymore.
no,
and once I got past that, like I just thought I just went the whole other way,
yeah,
and
yeah,
some of it to my detriment because walking out of that, like there's a lot of stuff I should have been reading over the years, a lot of philosophical stuff I should have been reading over the years. And I dug my heels in and resisted. I was like, I've been told what to think all of my life. I'm tired of being told what to think. I want to think for myself and figure these things out for myself. So there's a lot of stuff that I've just spent hours on hours on hours over microbrews talking to myself in a corner thinking about. You know what I mean? And I probably should have read a lot of stuff that I haven't read yet. Uh,
yeah. Oh, there's
it's
so much out there.
it's a lot because like it's one of those things I'm just now starting to get into learning more about evolution. Now I've believed in evolution since I became an atheist. Like the minute I looked into it, the minute I stopped, like I looked into all of the arguments I'd heard over the years as to why it wasn't true.
Mm-hmm. It's
And immediately found
nonsense.
a couple of videos. It's nonsense. I found a couple of videos that were like, yeah, that's all bullshit, and here's why. I was like, okay, well, evolution's true. That's one more thing that I don't have to worry about. So now I'm actually getting into a place where I'm going to start learning a little bit more about it. I'm actually a little angry at evolution, man, to be honest with you. I think it was a bad idea for us.
Why?
Because we're monkeys with anxiety, dude. I mean, like, we're monkeys with anxiety and existential crisis, man. All you got to do is compare the lives of human beings to the lives of bonobos, and it becomes completely freaking obvious. Like, bonobos, dude, what they do, they hang around, they cuddle, they groom each other, they eat fruit, and they have sex constantly. Yeah. That's what they do, right? Yeah. They're not like checking neurotic hypochondriacs into an ER at 3 o'clock in the morning that stink. They don't do things like that. They hang out, they eat fruit, they have sex, Neil. They're living my dream.
Yeah.
Is what's going on. The bonobos are living my freaking dream. And why? Why? Because they said, we're not going to go this way.
We're think secretly we would all like that, right? I think secretly inside we would all love that sort of an existence, really.
I'm telling you, natural...
Turn bonobos on to beer and we're good, right? So
I know, right? We'd have to have some
beer and that's it.
Certainly, we'd have to have some beer involved, but other than that, I don't know, man. I think I could get behind just the cuddling, fruit eating, and sex all the time without worrying about anything. Like a bonobo never sits back and says, "What does it all mean?" They don't do that.
No,
they don't do that to themselves. We do that to ourselves. They don't do that to themselves. You know what I'm saying? They're living my freaking dream, and it makes me mad a little bit. I kind of want to hunt them to extinction. Like, how dare you? How dare you? Like,
well, we don't want to do that. Come on. I mean, they're also they're not on the same level of consciousness as we are, really. So, if I could be that simple, I'd probably, if I could flip a switch and just be that simple and do that stuff, I guarantee you I'd do it at least a few times a year. Just to fuck off for a while, right?
Yeah. Oh, dude, there's something to be said about being tall, pretty, and dumb. You know?
Hey,
life's easy for tall, pretty, dumb people, man.
Well, all right, I got 2 of the qualifications, but I'm not dumb.
That's the problem. Yeah, I got cursed with average height and slightly above average intelligence.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I'm 6'4". If I put my boots on, I'm over 6'5", and well, pretty. I guess in my mom's eyes, I'm pretty, anyways. But aren't we all?
Hey, you're pretty enough for me, dude. You're pretty enough for me.
Well,
certainly tall enough. Certainly tall enough.
Yeah, I need something off the top shelf. So. Can you grab that for me?
Yes, I'm 5'9", man. Oh yeah, she makes you good fetch for her.
I'm the top shelf guy.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm the bug killer. Yeah, that's my job around the house. The bug killer. There's a bug or a lizard or this or that. Yeah, I'll get it. I don't know why we're bothering it, but we'll bother it.
Yeah, it's not bothering us.
Oh yeah.
It's just over there.
Yeah, it's up there in the corner eating flies.
Bugs from getting in here. So.
Yeah.
That's why I leave them alone. I'm like, yeah, spider, right on. Cool. Keep the other asshole bugs from being in here.
That's right. It's freaking jerks. Bugs are jerks. They freaking suck. That's funny. So yeah, I definitely want to learn more about evolution. I definitely want to learn more about other religions. Like, I know a lot about different sects of Christianity because growing up as an independent Baptist, one of our duties was to learn what we would consider the scriptural inadequacies of the other versions of Christianity were, so that we could debunk them if we came across them. Mm-hmm. So I know some of those, but I don't know a lot about like Islam. I don't know a lot about Hinduism, stuff like that. I know a little bit, but not enough to be, just enough to be dangerous to myself. There's this stuff I'd like to learn, but it's one of those things where it's like, I work 2 jobs. Where do I find the time? So I just slip it in there where I can. I just recently finished The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, and I just recently finished Sapiens, which is a great book. You haven't read that, dude?
I do want to read that. That's on my list for sure. But you know what? I've discovered audiobooks.
Yeah, I use audiobooks all day.
I read when I can at home, and then I just, mark where I've left off, and then take it in the car with me, and then go and just listen to the rest of it. Right? So.
Absolutely. I use audible.com. So I actually listened. When I say I read, just finished reading, I actually just finished listening to Righteous Mind and Sapiens. I didn't
I've changed
physically
the
read it.
vernacular to I've enjoyed this book one
There
way
you
or
go.
another.
Yeah, it was read to me
Yes,
by
the author, which is cool.
by the author, in fact. But yeah, I'm getting ready to start Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman again.
Mhm.
I read that years ago, and I'm going to go through it again. And I think after that, it's Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker, and then On the Historicity of Jesus
got
by
that
Richard
too.
Carrier.
Yep, got that one too.
Which it's 26 hours.
I know.
Good God,
I know.
Richard, edit, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Edit some of that down a little bit, dude. Like,
I could listen to him for hours, though, dude. I don't know. Same with Aaron Ra. When he reads his book, I have the Foundational Falsehoods, and just listening to these guys read their stuff, you're getting all the inflections where they should be. You're getting everything. So it's a much better experience, I think, personally.
oh, certainly. I actually liked. That's what I loved about God Is Not Great, because that was read by Hitchens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just listening. That's a guy I could listen to nonstop for. Like, I've listened through God Is Not Great probably I don't know how many times. I've got the
2
conclusion. I've got the conclusion cut down and edited into my phone playlist so that I can listen to just that part because I love it.
Nice.
And so it's an interesting thing, man. Like, I've wound up in the anti-theist camp, and I've gotten to a place where I'm way less tolerant than I used to be. But it's funny because my personal conversations never go that way. Like, I've never had I've had one antagonistic conversation about religion with a Christian person in my life, and that was my brother, who was a pastor, and that was just bound to go that way. You know what I mean? Right. We're brothers. We know exactly what buttons to push to get under each other's skin. So that's just going to happen. But every other conversation I've ever had has been really, really. I've held my ground, stood my ground. I've absolutely not. No, don't agree. This is why I don't agree. But I've always left every one of those conversations with that person as a friend. But it just seems so. The vitriol online is so ridiculous that it's just impossible to have those conversations.
I ignore most of it, to be honest, right? Because it's the same old shit over and over again. So
it is, and you can always, like, I swear to God, you can always tell a Turek fan. Like, I'll be talking to somebody in person, and they'll be like, "We're just molecules of motion." I said, "You read Frank Turek, haven't you?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Yeah, he's my hero." Like, he's my hero. Yeah. Like, dude, he sucks, man. That guy sucks. Like, I went and my ex-wife drugged me to watch him talk live. We went to watch him talk live, and it was right after Hitchens passed. It wasn't that long after Hitchens passed. And that was it was a big deal for me. And so she drugged me to this thing, and I'm sitting there, and he starts this conversation. He said, "I can prove unequivocally right now that all the miracles in the Bible actually happened." And I actually perked up a little bit. Like, if you can do that, dude, I'm flying you to switch. We're going to get you a Nobel Prize, dude. We got to pick that up. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you can prove that, you're the most amazing Homo sapien that's ever walked the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here, like, waiting for, like, what he's going to say, because I'm thinking he's got to be getting ready to say something I've never heard before. At this point, he says, "I can prove all of the miracles in the Bible happened because the first one happened, creation."
Okay.
Here
we go again.
I was like, "That's it. I'm tuning out. Yeah. I got this. Screw this guy. Screw this guy."
And we're done.
Yeah, and it's over. This guy's an idiot too. Like, I don't care what he's got a degree in. And then, like, I watched the debates with him before I went, and he didn't say anything like that in the debates with Hitchens. But I watched Hitchens just destroy him.
Yeah.
Both times. And to the point where he started getting emotional at the end. It was brutal. And he goes on this long spiel, and he's explaining all this stuff that he says, like, ask him if there's ultimate truth. And I think that's some kind of big gotcha. Because I don't see why anybody would have a problem with ultimate truth. I mean,
well, first let's
ultimate truth just means things are true.
Ultimate truth.
Right, but I mean,
but can we say anything is 100%? I don't think so.
I I don't know that we can
You
say it, but that doesn't mean that something
maximally
out
true. You know,
Right.
that's that new catchphrase word that I think William Lake Craig started. Maximally.
Yeah,
We can
well,
say
we can't. I don't know that we could say it.
99.9999 bar. Well, we could say it for specific things that we're trying to defend.
Right. Well, I would say that I don't know that we could say, like, as humans, you can say that we're absolutely positive of anything, but that doesn't mean that there's an issue with something being 100% true. You know what I'm saying? Like, we may not be able to tell what it is, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things out there that are true pretty much all the time. You know what I mean? Like mathematics and things like that. Like things that you could basically say that even if we all disappeared and another species evolved to our level, and they started doing mathematics, they're more or less going to discover the process in the same.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's no problem with that. So I don't know why they say that. It's like,
the flip side
we're
of
saying,
that too, by the way, the flip side of that is, would the same religions come about? Probably not.
They wouldn't. Nope. But I have wondered before, though, if the same foundational ethics would come up. Now that would be interesting. So if another species evolved to where we're at, the same cognitive and conscious level as us, thinking species that is self-aware and all the qualities that we have, would ethics similar to ours come into existence? Like, would the foundational ethics of that species be more or less the same as what ours are? In the sense that, all the different tribes of humans can be extraordinarily ethically different, but there seems to be some foundational principles like stealing, killing, raping, things like that are more or less frowned upon, if not completely just not allowed. Would that species develop the same ethics? That would be an interesting.
We see some, I guess, good morals and ethics even in the animal kingdom, and they're not at our level. We've seen empathy. Sure. We've seen, all kinds of stuff, right?
Right. And I totally get that. With like bonobos and chimpanzees, and you see it with any number of species where they have empathy and they have rules and they have all this stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Social structure.
I mean, like, it gets to the point.
You faded out on me.
Becomes ingrained as a talking point. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there's an idea that there's nothing objective about morality, and I'm on board with that for the most part. I am a subjectivist. I don't think that I think that we created morals, and or better yet, I think that morals evolved through natural selection over a time period, which is why it's why things are getting dropped out all the time. In the same way,
morals are fluid, really. They change with society and whatnot.
As do religions. They don't like to admit it, but they changed with the society too. They like to take credit for it. They like to say, "Oh, well, see, we're a kinder, gentler Christianity these days," and it's like, you've been castrated. That's what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Humanity, like modernity came in and took your cojones away, and that's why you're a kinder, gentler, religion these days. I don't think the same would be true if you guys still had the power, could still wield the power that you used to. If you could all of a sudden take away the internet.
Every of the Abrahamic religions, anyways, every one of them, and some are still doing it, but have gone through the let's slaughter everyone that doesn't believe the same thing we do phase, right? But Judaism went through it first, and then they mellowed out after a while. Then Christians came along, and they went through it, and then they mellow out after a while, and Islam went through it, and some are still going through it because the hardcore fundamentalists are still trying to kill everyone that doesn't agree with them, and eventually that shall fade away. Let's hope at some point, right?
I want all of it to fade away.
Well,
I don't even want it to reform. I want it to go away.
I'd like to at least see, some sort of steps towards reform. And once they hit that phase, I feel it's a little easier to sort of throw in a little WD-40 here and there and ease them out of it.
Well, you've got reform happening. I mean, you've got characters out there pushing for reform. In the Muslim world, what's his name that wrote the book with Sam Harris? I can't think of his name right this minute. Not him. Majid.
Yeah.
It's like Majid Noise or something like that. Sorry if I butchered his name. There's that guy.
Yeah,
there's
age.
Yeah, they got people out there working towards it, but I mean, the problem is, I mean, yeah, definitely the reforms first. And also I think, I mean, you're right about that in the sense that, moving in that direction and easing people or easing the species out of religion and into something better is what's going to happen, because there's nothing, there is no secular program, at least not in America, there's no secular programs that have the infrastructure that exists in the church. You know what I mean? Like the church has a massive infrastructure that exists all the way across the nation. It's established as there's no admission to go. You don't have to be a member. For most of them, you can just show up to any function you want most of the time. So the infrastructure
organizations.
Yeah, but they don't have the infrastructure that the church has. I mean, there's a humanist organization, but there's not like 300 of them in a 70 square mile. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
There's not like you can't. That's one of the battles we're going to have to think about moving forward, is how do we create something that can rival what, at least in this nation, what Christianity has. Like, how are we going to create something that can function like a nonprofit in that manner? You see what I'm saying? Like, where you don't have to charge people admission to get in. You don't have to, like, people can just show up. Like, it's, there's things that are happening. You got the meetups and the online stuff that's going on where you can just, meet up with like-minded people and have conversations and make friends and friendships and have a community in that light. But there's just something about the fact that people can just get up on Sunday morning and drive up the street and walk in the doors and do their thing and, go out to dinner with their friends that they made there afterwards and hang out. They have functions during the week.
If we did that as atheists, then they'd have a little bit more rights, I think, to call us a religion, because we have a meeting place, right? Even though, no matter how many times you tell them that it's merely a position on the existence of gods, really, that's all it is. They still, no, you guys all get together and you preach to other. It's like, no, we don't fucking preach, but they love to.
We debunk.
That we do. Yeah.
We debunk. Atheism and anti-theism are demonstrably not religions. I mean,
no,
they're not. Not in the colloquial sense, certainly. Like in *Sapiens*, he makes the comparison to, like, where even he says, like, things like political positions are the same as religions. Like, there are ideologies that are ingrained and so on and so forth. And he makes a good point for it, but it doesn't change anything. Like, I mean, my argument's always been, like, even if atheism is a religion, it's not, but even if it was, why does that make it wrong? Right? Like, we can tell you why Christianity is wrong because we can demonstrate things that are wrong in the text. We can show you these are demonstrably false in the text. Like, even if you could prove atheism is a religion, that doesn't make it invalid. Like, all of the religions are invalid because they're demonstrably false. If they were not, we wouldn't be able to say the things about them that we do. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, like, to me, it's I don't even understand why they think that's such a gotcha, because it's really not a gotcha. Because it's like, other than to say, well, you say all religions are wrong, but you practice a religion. And it's like, well, so do you. That's like throwing rocks in a glass house, dude. Like,
we don't practice anything.
Yeah.
I don't practice. I'm pretty good at it.
There's no there's no requirements. You know what I mean? There's no requirements whatsoever for it. Like, you can be an atheist and be a Republican or conservative. You can be an atheist and hold anything you want /atheist. Like, you can't do that if you're a religious person. Not and be in line with the text and with the commandments of the religion itself. And when I did an interview with a guy named I can't remember his name. I did an interview on a podcast called Entree News, which was pretty fun. And the way I described it to him was like, because atheism didn't directly, like, because I don't have to be anything and be an atheist. Atheist just means I don't believe in God. Like, for me,
Yeah, it's just a position.
There is no God. But it did affect
an answer to the claim, is what it is. Or it's you're saying something exists. I'm saying I don't believe it because I don't see anything to show that it does, and that's my stance.
Correct. And so, but I did say, it did inform my ethics to a degree, because it removed the text. Sure. So where I would have before had to square a circle to make a moral position work one way or the other. Like, if I wanted to say, dude, leave homosexuals alone, they're just fine, they're not hurting anybody, if God doesn't like it, let him take it up with them. I have to find some way to square that. I have to find some way to square that if I'm a Christian. As an atheist, I can just say, dude, all sex that is mutually consented in an informed manner is permissible and good.
Yep.
Shut up and mind your business. Like, there's nothing you can say to me at this point that will convince me of anything other than that.
It shouldn't, because essentially that's the best way you could look at
it. So, but I could have never said that as a Christian, or I could have never changed my position from anti-choice to pro-choice as a Christian. I never could have done that, but it just naturally happened. Mm-hmm. Like, when I changed over, that just naturally happened. Like, because all of a sudden I'm taking the Bible, chucking it over my shoulder and saying, I don't even have to look at this shit anymore. And then somebody brings up an ethical problem, I can say, okay, well, what are the first off, what are the circumstances of the situation? Who's involved in the situation? What are their intentions? What were their intentions? How did it happen? I can look at the whole situation for what it is and draw conclusions just out of empathy and out of logic and out of reason. I can lead my life based on my life instead of leading my life based on some fucking trumped up text. And so that, I would say, is at least one point for me where being an atheist totally changed my outlook on things. Like, I shifted towards all kinds of stuff.
The bullshit ideologies get tossed with the book, really, and then you sort of awaken yourself to better ideologies, we'll say, in regards to those topics like homosexuality, etc.
Yeah, well, you get to the point where you're like, well, wait a minute, man. Like, why do I believe that? Like, why do I have this position? Like, I've always had this specific political position. Mm-hmm. Why do I have that position? Do I have it because it's right, or do I have it because I think I'm supposed to? And then you can find all the stuff that you think you're supposed to believe and chuck it out the window, and you can make better decisions, better moral decisions. It's one of the reasons why. Reevaluate it. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why I'm so vocal about atheism. It's that realizing just the kind of the change you have in your personal life, in your opinions, and how you deal with people and how you see things. The kind of change that can happen by just not believing some created bullshit that was written by humans that didn't know anything about anything. You know what I mean? My children know more.
The sun went tonight.
Yeah, I mean, my children know more about the natural world than the wisest of them did. And so why would I even give that any? It's like, I don't know. I would say one of my biggest regrets, I think, is that I didn't come to these conclusions at a much younger age.
Yeah.
That's a regret for me. I hate that because I wasted an enormous amount of my life. It's an interesting thing because, we're still running across Pascal's wager on a regular basis. And it's like, that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Anywhere.
I know.
It's got to be the dumbest thing ever because
it's like plea bargaining or something.
Yeah, well, if I believe this and I'm wrong, I've lost nothing. It's like, no, dude, you've poured enormous amounts of your life resources into a bullshit lie.
Yeah.
You've lost everything. You lost your life.
You've literally lost the opposite of nothing. You've pretty much lost your entire existence because you've given it all to something that, as far as we can tell, isn't even there.
Something that, as far as we can tell, isn't even there, and there's no good reason to believe in, And it's like, it's funny because anytime I hear anybody bringing any of the Christian apologetics to the table, no matter what it is, I'm always just kind of like, it just seems it's so utterly unconvincing to me that I wonder too, like, why am I even getting involved in this? Because there gets a point where it's just like I'm just repeating the same shit over and over again, and then they're acting like I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Like they're asking me questions. I answer the questions. They say I didn't answer the question. It's like, no, I just answered the question. No, you didn't answer the question. And they ask the same question again. And it's like, I'm just not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not.
If they don't like the answer, they're going to keep doing that to you. Your answer
They certainly
hurts.
are.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. My answer hurts. All right.
Yeah.
But my answer hurts like a medical treatment that's going to save your life hurts.
Yeah.
You know, getting a broken bone set hurts. That doesn't mean you don't do it. You know what I mean? Like the best outcome is to get that bone set and get something put on it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with losing religion. You know, it sucks. It was the most traumatic and painful thing I ever went through. It was harder on me emotionally than my divorce was. I mean, it wrecked me for a long time. But once I got to the other side of it, I never felt freer than I've ever been in my life. I've never felt that good about anything.
I hear that so often from people.
I can remember the day it happened. I can remember the day I was in a work truck driving, and I had been in the habit of talking to God for so long. Like I would just talk to God all day long if I was by myself. And I was in the habit of talking to God that I was still doing it, even though I didn't believe. Like I would catch myself doing it. And I would stop, but I would catch myself doing it. I was riding in my car one day, and something had just gone terribly wrong for me. And I just got about ready to say something, and I went, what am I doing? There's no God.
Old habits die hard, man.
And at that point, it was like a weight came off my shoulders, and I was good. And I went home, and I came out of the closet as an atheist, and all hell broke loose. It was the same day.
Wow. Oh, and tell me a little bit about that. What happened there?
That's what I was talking. I would say earlier. Like I came home, and I got on Facebook, and I changed everything to an atheist, and my ex-wife freaked out, stomped screaming around the house. She walked up on me and said, that's what she walked up on me and said, you know, all my friends are going to know they were right about you. And I have a bad habit. And that really stung me too, because like it always bothered me that they'd said that, because before she married me, they were like, you're making a huge mistake because he's not Christian enough for you and he's not good enough for you. And so she knew that was like a tender place for me. So she hit me with that.
They were already against you from the get-go.
Yeah, even as a Christian.
Wow.
So she said that to me. And I have this bad habit of, like, if somebody wounds me, I wound back. I'm not a, like, turn the other cheek guy. If you hurt me, I'm likely going to hurt you back most of the time. So I just looked her dead in the face and said, you know, believe in this nonsense that you believe doesn't mean you're going to get to survive your death. You're never going to see anybody that you've loved that's died ever again. And I regretted it the minute I said it, apologized profusely for it. But she flipped and ran out of the house. And I sometimes wonder if she doesn't struggle just immensely with her faith, because she gets no existential security out of it. Like she is more afraid of death and of people she knows dying than any person I've ever known. And it's like, but you're convinced that you're going to live forever. And like the minute you're gone, you're going to be back with those people. So why are you afraid of this? I don't understand. Like that doesn't make sense. Why do you live in such howling dread?
As much as they want to believe it's going to be a thing, it's still, I'll guarantee you there's somewhere in the back of their mind where, well, geez, I don't know. Is this real? It's still an unknown. I hope it's real, but
there's that point where they wake up. Yeah. There's that point where they wake up in the middle of the night and there's nothing else to occupy their thoughts in the back of their head. It's like, wait a minute. You know, and then that's where it starts. That's where it started for me. Yeah. Those moments of clarity, you know what I mean? Those weird moments of clarity when my mind would go, that just sounds like bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, donkeys don't talk, snakes don't talk, the earth isn't flat, it's not the center of the universe. You know, like, there's no freaking way any of this stuff is true. God's a jerk. He's a freaking jerk. Like, all you gotta do is read the book, man. The guy's a jerk. And
he can't be all-knowing, that's for damn sure. He can't be. That's impossible.
Yeah.
If you go by the books, the stories in there, he cannot be all-knowing. He even expresses regret for making humans. Like, what the fuck? How could you be all-knowing and have regret? What?
That's funny. I was talking to one of the more major people on Twitter that's doing the apologetic thing for Christianity right now. I don't remember which one it is, but he we were talking about it, and I was talking about how, like, God creating some people to burn in hell. You know what I mean? There's no love in that. There's no love in that. And he was like, well, if a judge acquitted, I said that's capricious. It shows us how capricious the nature of your God is.
Yep.
And he said something along the lines of, if 10 people killed a person and a judge acquitted one of them, is he being capricious? And I said, why did he acquit him? It's like, he didn't say. I said, well, then likely, yeah, he's being capricious. But I mean, that's not
Absolutely.
that's just a false equivalent to begin with. First off, that question sucks because that question sucks because, one, I have to ask you 20 more questions before I can even make adjudicate an opinion on it. You know, like, there's so much I need to know about what happened. Like, what was that kid's level of involvement? What the person's level of involvement? What did the person that got killed do to make these people want to kill him? What happened? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much I got to know. But then on top of that, it's an even greater false equivalent, because on one side of things, you've got a fallible human judge and 10 fallible human beings, and the judge is adjudicating against those beings. He's likely to make mistakes. Your God is infallible and is judging his creation for its inborn nature. You know what I'm saying? He's judging his creation and everyone in it for the way they were born. Like, those two things are so far separated that question's not even valid. But I didn't get to say any of that because he never answered me.
Of course, because he doesn't have a reasonable answer for that, right? He shouldn't, anyways, because there really wouldn't be one if you're taking his position. So
there's not a reasonable answer, and then it's a strange thing. Like, we're seeing Precept come back. You're seeing guy like, what was it? Cy Bruggencate, that was his name. He seems like a nice guy. I told him the other day on Twitter that he has
to talk to. Outside of this, he actually is a pretty cool guy. But
I said to him the other day, like, you have the courage of your convictions, and I respect that. You know, he stands his ground. He doesn't really give any. He doesn't, like, do that thing. Like, he'll say, yeah, God created some people to sin, and he does that sinlessly, and to be honest, I don't know how. Like, well, what? I guess.
Holy shit! You mean he said, I don't know? Wow.
Yeah, he just said, I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And it's like, well, I mean, at least,
who cares?
At least you stand,
Why would he do it if he's all loving?
Yeah.
Why would he create
doesn't
people
make sense.
just to sin? What do they have? Vacancies they got to fill in hell? Well, slot number 13, 72, and 1,097,000 are open. We need to fill those.
Yeah, it's a stupid position, but I mean, he's not trying to, like square a circle there. He's just flat out saying it. You know what I mean? It's like, I got to give him at least the props. At least he's just flat out saying, yeah, this is what he's doing, and I don't know how, but somehow it's holy. Like, that's a silly thing to say, but at least it's freaking honest. You know what I mean? At least he's got the balls to say the truth. Like, you know what I mean? It's like he's not, like, trying to pussyfoot around the subject. But then it's like you're seeing this Precept stuff come back, and that's frustrating because, like, every preceptor I've ever seen does the same thing over and over again. It's like they just try to needle the other person with questions until the other person throws their hands up in disgust and stomps off. And it's like, you're not even trying to prove, like, you refuse to actually have a conversation. You just ask the same question 100 times. And it's a question that we can't necessarily answer. Like, is there a higher foundation for morals? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. But I know that you don't know either. And so that's where
all of us have our own individual moral code. And yes, we get that from other sources, but we pick and choose what we feel would suit us and the people we care about the best, right? I don't think it's a good idea to kill people. I don't think it's a good idea to rape people. However, there are times when killing someone might be necessary.
Yeah.
Right? To save yours and your family's life, possibly. Or, but I don't ever see a time when rape would be a good thing at all. So, but stealing's another one. You might be forced to steal something to feed your family, right? And some megacorp isn't going to miss $12. You know what I mean?
Right. I can absolutely give you a scenario that would provide an ethical position for stealing, killing, and lying all at the same time. I could give you a scenario where all three of those things,
lying's
work.
Not illegal, though, unless you're perjuring in court. Lying is actually illegal.
Right, but legality and ethical nature aren't necessary. You know what I mean? There are things that are not ethical that aren't really illegal. But like if you took a situation where the Germans have some weapon in World War II, we send in a spy. That spy's lying about who he is and what his intention is. That's the only way to look at it because he's not being truthful. So he's lying all the way across the board there. He goes in, he finds this weapon that they're working on. He steals the plans for the weapon. He blows up the factory and kills everybody in it, right? The Jews are going to, the Germans are going to use this weapon to kill more Jews. They're going to use it to kill more Britons. You know what I mean? And we got to stop the Germans. Like nobody would say either of those three things reasonably is unethical at that point. They're necessary. You know what I mean? To stop that horrible enemy. But you cannot, like the way I look at something, there's only two things I think of that are personally, to me, objectively wrong that I can think of. One is slavery, owning of humans. The other is the acquisition of sex by any means other than informed mutual consent.
Yep.
Those two things are objectively evil for me, and it's because you cannot make any reasonable exception for them. There is no point when you can say, I had to rape somebody because ... I have to own this human because ... and it's reasonable. That argument doesn't exist. Those two things are objectively morally evil in my eyes. Everything else slides on a spectrum of whether or not it's permissible in this situation or how bad is it along the line. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's different levels of murder, there's different levels of theft, there's different levels of everything. But those two items sit with me as objectively wrong and absolutely unacceptable. Like we can't accept them on any level. What I mean is though, is like, I don't know, like there's a huge debate going on about the difference between objective and subjective morality. And I lean towards subjectivism really heavily.
Me too.
But I'm wise enough to say that I'm not educated enough and to make any concrete stance on it. Like I don't have the level of scholarship that some of the people that are talking about this thing have, and everything I've come up with as to like that whole spiel about rape and all that's all personal to me. That's all stuff I've sat in my room and talked to myself about for hours and hours and hours on end over beer and come to conclusions over. There's been some outside influences, but a lot of the stuff I think just comes from me thinking. And I don't have that much faith in myself as a partly rational monkey with an overly active sex drive. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I don't know that I trust myself well enough to say that I can say no, morals are just subjective. Because there seems to be a fairly good argument on both sides of the equation, and I'm just going to lean towards agnosticism on it. I'm going to lean towards subjectivity because that seems to be the most rational position that I can come across.
I concur.
If I can't point to any higher power than myself, then I certainly can't point to any higher foundation for morals necessarily.
Yeah.
But I can think of people who have better moral positions than I have. I would say personally would say that from an ethical position, a vegan is a more ethical person than I am. That's just me personally. I'm not putting that on anybody else. But I would say for me personally, they're a more ethical person than I am. It's one place where I choose that, as far as I'm concerned, that I like eating meat too much. It's far too easy. I enjoy it, and I'm only going to live this life once. So I'm just doing what I want to do. So that's a place where I'm just saying my ethics are weaker than somebody else's, and I'm going to accept that in myself.
Yeah, so, I'd have to say mine are too. Then
I can see how we can get more ethical. And it's pretty clear.
I don't eat as much meat as I used to because, of course, that's cholesterol for me now. I have to start paying attention to that. But I still eat my share of it. But I have very much enjoyed. I have friends that are vegan, and they've introduced me to vegan-type foods that are actually quite delicious. So I don't mind eating that as well. But I can't give up meat altogether. I still have to have some from time to time.
Yeah. I'm definitely a meatosaurus, dude. I'm a carnivore all day. I don't.
Bacon for me, 24/7, if I could, man.
I hear you. I definitely get, like, when it comes to a lot of that stuff, like with the ethics and morals, like the objective versus subjective. I would say, like, because of that, like the question, like where we're seeing the same, we're seeing similar ethical principles in other species of animal on the planet. They're not as refined as ours. The question is that, if there was another species that was as cognitive as us and refined their ethics, would they look like extremely similar to ours? And if they did, I would think that based on just the harm wellness principle, you could say there's some objective nature to morals, because at least most species that get to where we're at are going to refine morals to a similar place as us, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is we don't necessarily have that evidence yet. We don't have another species that behaves like us, and if we did, that would be a whole other conversation. But you can still make the argument for subjectivity there too. So it's like, to me, it's like you can make the argument from both sides. The easiest thing for me to believe or easiest place for me to fall without having too much cognitive dissonance is subjectivity. So I just reside there. If anybody ever comes along and provides like a valid argument, or an argument that's valid enough to change my mind, I'm totally open to change my mind. If I say anything anywhere in any forum that is wrong, I'm totally open to being corrected and told why it's wrong. I mean, if I don't agree that it's wrong, I'm not going to agree with you. But if somebody else can point out why it's wrong, I'm happy to say that's true. I think that's another one of the upsides of not believing anymore, because it becomes so much easier to accept that there's things that we just don't know.
True. Yeah. Some things we're always not going to know, right? So if we're lucky enough to be around when these things are discovered or realized or found or whatever, then that's great. But there's always going to be unanswered questions.
There is. There's going to be, yeah. Well, and I mean, because species will be around that much longer. You know what I mean? Like, we're right. We've been right. We've been right on the edge of fucking it up for a while. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
We've been right on the edge. I went through
the first Cold War, as did you, right? In the 80s, we were always worried about being on the verge of the button pushing.
Right, and it got really close a couple times. There's been a couple times that a flock of birds almost brought about the extinction of probably most of the life on the planet. So I would love to see us get past this part and into something else. Well, I'll never see it. It's the same thing I said when.
You and I will never be here for when religion finally fizzles out completely, because I don't know if it really ever will. There might be some minor form of it to some degree, right? I think.
Or it could be replaced with some other form of woo. Or it could, what I mean? There's any number of things it can be replaced with. There's definitely seems to be an intrinsic need or an intrinsic element of religiosity in the race in general, in the species in general.
It's almost genetically coded into us, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how you get rid of that.
Maybe you and I are examples that it can be done. You just have to change how you think about it.
I'm talking about on a species. Right, I'm talking about on a species level. Yeah, on
Sure,
a
but
species
we're
level,
example of that species,
we are.
right? So we are examples of that. It is possible, and it can be done.
It is possible and it can be done, but we're certainly not going to see it. The way I always say is that I have no doubt that I'll never see that. I won't live to see the death of religion, but I do enjoy being a tiny cog in the machine that's going to kill it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I like being more like the Lucas Oil lubricant. Squirt a little bit in here, a little over there, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll lube it all up and get it going. I'm a professional at lubing it up and getting it going, dude.
Okay, things that sound dirty.
Things that sound dirty for 800, Alex.
Yeah.
I like to lube it up and get it going.
Yeah, lube her up and get her all going. There you go. You got to get some penetration in there somehow. Okay, maybe not to that extreme.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Look where we veered off into.
It's my fault, dude. I'm a dirty mind. If you give me any leeway into naughtiness, I will sashay into the naughtiness with no regrets whatsoever.
Dangling carrot. Whoa! It's like the guy with the dollar bill on the fishing rod, right? Oh, I almost had it. Oh, there you go.
That's exactly right.
Well, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do an after party for this one because there really isn't anyone viewing here anymore. We got like 3 viewers. And the people that are viewing don't normally jump into my after parties or any that I've been involved with. So I think we're just going to have to wrap this up with some final thoughts. And I'm going to make my way over to a friend of mine's place for some barbecue. I think I'll show up early. I told him I wasn't going to be there till around 6, but.
Well, that sounds good to me, man. As far as afterthoughts go, it was just a fun conversation. You didn't, I'm sure I've said something somewhere in this conversation that will trigger somebody, and I'll likely hear about it down the road, and I'm fine with that.
That's perfectly okay. We'll be prepared to break out some more of that.
I swear to God, man, I can't have a conversation about anything without somebody getting offended and being like, how dare you?
Like that.
It seems like there's one in every group. Like we've got the guy that got in I put a tweet out about my meetup that I'm organizing. And some guy came in and compared me to freaking Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I'm proselytizing. Then we had KC put the thing.
Tell me that I had a Muslim tell me to stop posting this stuff on my page. I'm like, what? How about you just not pay attention to my page? How's that sound?
How about this? I'll just block you, and then you can't see my page.
I'm not going to do that. He doesn't follow me or anything. He just saw. I guess it showed up in a friend of his might have posted something I said. Maybe, who knows?
I've only blocked I think 3 people in the history of three or 4. One of them is a doxer, a known doxer. Yeah. I blocked one guy just because he was also really shady. Like I found he was talking to us, and I found an article about him on Google. Like he just has his name, and I Googled his name. There's this article talking about how shady a guy he was, and I was like, I don't want to be involved with you. And there was a couple people that were inciting violence, saying things to incite violence. Wow. And I was like, I don't have any use for you. I don't want you anywhere around me. But on the whole, I don't normally block people just because I don't like them. I've been blocked a few times. I've been blocked. Eve Kaninen blocked me. That took forever. I was trying to get blocked for a solid 4 months, and she was just holding on, man. And then one day, I just looked and I was like, I'm blocked. It's about time. I don't have to see any of that crap anymore. It's been a fun conversation. People get triggered all the time. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah, get triggered and come to Twitter and yell at me. Sure. I'm Duke Bonanza here. I'm Duke Bonanza at Twitter. I'm Duke Bonanza everywhere I go. Got my name from a porn name generator. That's the fun thing.
You never told me that until this very moment, and that is fucking awesome.
I found this meme online.
That's so funny.
Oh, it's simple, man. It was just a meme. Yeah, it's a meme. It said, your porn name is, your first name is whatever your pet's name is, and your last name is the street you grew up on. Our dog is Duke. I grew up on Bonanza Drive, or that's the one I can remember. I was like, Duke, Bonanza, that's too good not to keep. And, I use it without any numbers everywhere I go. So apparently nobody else wants it.
Shit, if I went by that, and I went with the first dog we owned, which her name was Candy, and the first street I lived on was Canby, so it'd be Candy Canby, which sounds kind of silly. Now, if I went with the second street I ever lived on, which was Ryan Road, then it'd be Candy Ryan, and that sounds a little bit more pornesque. But I would be a female.
It does. The Duke Bonanza sounds like a freaking clown name, like
I was
clown
thinking
porn.
old
That's
Western.
what it is. Yeah,
because you think Duke and Bonanza, like the Duke and Bonanza, right? The show. So I was thinking that'd be like a cowboy name. What's your name? Duke Bonanza. What's it?
It's totally my porn star name. That's what it is. I love it. But yeah, it's been
Bonanza's the payload.
It's been a fun conversation. If there's anything that I'd like to see moving forward, like as a final thought, there seems to be a lot of drama going on all the time.
There is, but that's a gimme, man.
It's just
That's
life.
just going to happen.
It is just going to happen.
Differences of opinion.
But some of it
People
seems
have issues, right?
Yeah, some of it seems really super unnecessary, and I hate it.
Yeah.
So I wish we could find a way around that. But other than that, I love that I found this community, of people. It's been, everybody's really super supportive, and we're all fun. We all flock together and kick ass, and that's good.
Exactly.
For the first time in my life, I've got
quite a few.
Yeah, man, I fucking posted on them a while back, but seriously, it's like I would have never believed for a minute that I could have the affection I have for people that I've never met. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And I actually
because we have similarities, even though we all have differences. I think it's our similarities that glom us all together, right? So.
Yeah, well, we also communicate with each other. We're always lifting each other up. We're always taking care of each other. We're always looking out for each other, and it's a lot of fun. And it's like, if you'd asked me before I started doing Twitter if I ever felt like I could have that, like this kind of thing, I would have said no, not at all, man. But it's proven me wrong. It's proven me wrong, and I'm in the best possible way. So, I love everybody that follows me and I follow. I hope they are having a blast and having a good time. I've had a great time talking to you, Neil. Hopefully,
it's been awesome. It's been awesome.
Hopefully, I was some level of coherent, and I wasn't too all over the place.
You were just fine. We jumped around a little bit, but that's happens every time you talk about something like this because there's always going to be some other thought that just kind of comes, oh, hey, and puts itself in your head, right? So,
oh yeah, man. Well, because it connects
really
to everything.
Articulate there, but I'm really good at explaining stuff like that with like hand gestures and bubbles that flow. Yeah, whatever. But people get the idea, and that's the main thing. As long as the communication is solid and understood, that's when you know you're doing all right with it. So.
Sweet.
And this has been fantastic.
Yeah, man. We should talk again sometime, even if it's just to have a chat. You know what I mean? Even if it's just to kind of get together and talk. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate. I
think we should do another live chat, and I think this time we should tackle the realm of music. We'll do a music specifically for music.
Yeah, man. We could definitely do that. We'll find out where we diverge. Find out where we don't get along.
That might be harder than you think. Because I pretty much enjoy almost every genre. There's something that I'm like, that's really fucking good. Right?
Yeah, I've
whatever genre, it doesn't even matter. Even opera. Yeah. I used to hate opera.
I love opera. I've actually created.
I love a few of them now for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I've created multiple playlists in the past week on top of yours. So like I made one for Rachel, I made one for Claire, I made one for Shannon, I made one for you, and I made one for Godless Island. And thanks. And they literally touch every one of those touches a different genre of music. None of them are the same. So and I'm the same way. I can really get into the meat of a lot of different kinds of music and talk about it.
I love that because you might get introduced to something you didn't even know about, and then you'll be like, wow, I really like this now.
Yeah, right? That's happened to me a lot. I've had that happen quite a bit where somebody's like, I hear some band and I'm like, actually, a great example is Ben Folds 5. I hated them as a kid, or I thought I did. I heard the song Brick, and it was in the mid-'90s, and it was like, oh, great, another sad bastard piano song. That's just what we need. and I just turned the channel, and I never listened to them again. And then like years later, somebody played the song Kate for me, and I was like, this is genius. Why have I not been listening to this all of my life?
Oh. All right, I just said just say goodbye to everybody in the chats. So
perfect.
We'll shut it down. Duke, thanks a lot, everyone. I have a link to his channel down below. He's got some really, really good acoustic music that he's done himself that he's put up there. I highly recommend Victoria. It has become my personal favorite. And I think, what's it been a week since you showed me? And I think I've listened to it probably over 1,000 times because I really love it. It's excellent, dude. You've got a good talent for that. And that the tones and notes that you're using, the minors and shit like that, I really dig that stuff.
Let me throw this out there real quick. That song is written about the most wonderful woman I've ever known.
I kind of figured that was probably just by the emotional ride that it has. So
yeah. That song is written about the most wonderful woman I've ever met. So
there you go. All right, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, as I said earlier, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. So please remain godless. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks again, Duke. Man, peace out. We'll talk on Twitter. Cheers.
Cool, man.